Hello, I'm Trevette Cofield in the Principal Certification Program. I am completing the first assignment for a field observation video. During my field experience visit with Ms. Jones, there was an incident that took place on campus where a student was cut and was bleeding profusely. She took the opportunity to address this issue as a teaching tool in her clinical studies class. The kids are getting ready to leave to Presby Hospital to do their clinical rotation. She wanted to remind them about using critical thinking. During that time, Ms. Jones had, of course, an agenda and an objective. The objective was to use real life situations and demonstrating critical thinking, how to watch who is around you and the clues that are around you and how to apply them in the skills that you're going to be using in the setting of their clinical rotation at the hospital in the area. During this time, Ms. Jones had to deviate from her planned case study. It just so happened this emergency did happen yesterday on our campus, that it did affect her students. They were involved in the incident. They walked in when the incident was at the very tail end, and her students quickly, and of course herself, went quickly into action, and she wanted to show the difference in the way she handled it, the way certain students handled it, and why it was important for them to use their critical thinking skills, because anything could happen, especially during this holiday seasons, emergencies arise. And she took the opportunity to use a real life situation in her teaching strategy. It was a hands-on kind of situation. Her students did have to make sure other students were safe from bodily fluid. She taught them how to protect their parameters. They even witnessed how to clean up the bodily fluid and how to stop bleeding and emergency protocol and procedures and the reactions of others. And it gave her an opportunity to show the students not everyone responds and acts the same way. So it was a really good activity for me to be a part of. It was really interesting to see how Ms. Jones really married what happened and how the students were exposed to what happened when they were coming off the bus, and what responses were appropriate and inappropriate, and how she demonstrated that, and how important it was to learn how to critically think, since all of these students were going to be in the clinical field real soon. During this time, it was going to be heavily teacher-led. She did do questioning and answering of the students. Her objectives were clearly posted. Her agenda was clearly posted. She went in the order that she was going to model the class, so it was great. She used the area and the space of the classroom very fantastically. The students' attention was incredible, and I love the way she handled certain discipline issues in her classroom, like cell phone usage, when students would drop down and start using their cell phone, how she quickly brought them back into the conversation. Normally, Ms. Jones's class would consist on lots of hands-on activities because she is a lab-based class, but this gave her an opportunity to analyze, to kind of pick apart what happened, and instead of using the case study that they were going to use, they used the realistic situation of the student and how to respond to it. So it was really interesting. Her teaching model did change. It wasn't teach, then demonstrate, then they demonstrate. It was more teacher-led question and answering.
We're teaching you guys how to critically think. Now, in my day, it was called common sense. No, I'm being for real. I'm keeping it 100. It's called common sense. How do I teach you to critically think? I don't know. I really don't. But that's what we have in our teams, and this is what we're supposed to do with you. In the hospital field, A1 heard my spiel. We had an incident. I'm sure you heard about it too, with a student. I don't know if he completely chopped off his fingers or almost chopped them off. Yesterday. Stay with Miss Lynn. So, we were coming in off the bus. Yeah, because she's doing, you can't multitask, you got to either me or that. All right, we came in off the bus, and as we came in, what happened, A1? There was blood. Thank you. Everywhere. And I even said from what point to what point, A1?
Cafeteria.
I heard cafeteria to where?
300 hall.
Thank you, A1. I'm checking them for critical listening. Because we talked about it because I was pretty upset. All right, so when we came in and we saw a massive amount of blood. You know my students were kind of overwhelmed, right? Big eyes, right? Yes. And so I stayed dead calm and I started positioning. Called them by name. I don't want to call names in here. You here, 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 here. Why would I do that, A2?
So it's not you too.
Me levitate. Okay.
So they won't step on it.
Thank you. They cheat, especially this one. All right, so my students stood there and looked. We had 3 people walking down the middle.
Like on
The blood.
On the blood?
What is this? What is this?
Oh my gosh.
I'm down here about to die. Why? A2, A1, we did the walk and talk. Hold on, I'm coming back to you guys. A2.
Because they're not doing anything to help and they're just kind of just in the way.
I was very angry. And it showed. My patients were like this. Because I said to them, stand here and make sure no one step in the blood. How many times did I tell you guys I can't repeat myself 15 times? We don't have that kind of time. That was a crisis going on right there. I don't have time to keep repeating my instructions to you. If I ask you to stand there and make sure no one walks down, that's what I mean. So I snapped. It's the first time they got to see me snap and it wasn't hurting. But it was necessary. Because you do not want to get into someone's blood, body fluids at all. You don't know what they have. Selena. You have no clue what they have. And that's to protect you, but also protect other people. That's why we have on these uniforms, guys. It's not just look cute. You know we look cute. But we're supposed to work. Are we not? Okay, so is that my phone? Please turn it off for me. Thank you. The battery's low. I appreciate that. All right, so I told my 3 jokers to come to me. Why are you standing there? It's exactly what they did. So it's not happy. They said, you and you, come here. And I came in the room, you and you, get here. And they came. I didn't really have to say anything. Get down there. They got there. My females. Sorry, males. Sorry. My females got on point for me. And they were proud. And they stood there. Don't you come with them. You know I love visuals, right? That's all I did to them. That means carry on. Good job. Y'all went to Presby with me. Did I not use my hand signals? Yeah. I did that. Y'all parted that Red Sea. That's what I mean. I don't have time in a business. It's not the time to train you in here. Loved it. That meant. And I love him. He was so loud in the cafeteria. I stood up and I did this to Alvin Cofield. I sat back down. Now, watch this test. What did my counterpart do? Demonstrated somebody. Just, baby. Somebody, anybody, one person though.
What?
What did she say in that classroom when she yelled?
Quiet or something. Be quiet.
Wait,
Yeah.
oh, I know.
You know, he yelled him, hold on, what did she say? No, she did
She
not.
said clinical finishing or what?
Did she say shut up?
Yeah, loudly. Y'all remember? She turned around.
Oh, girl.
Shut up! Shut up! And I jumped. The educator jumped. The classroom across the hallway from us. Now, do you see why I use visuals? We do that in the hospital. Now, I'm not throwing her under the bus. If that's the way she effectively communicates with her class, more power to her. But in here, high school, I expect you to be able to look at me and understand my visual cues. Drop it. Sit it down. I don't want to hear it. You start, especially Autumn, cut it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want you to have the last say. Just stop talking for whatever reason. If I'm doing this kind of stuff, it's a reason. Then we're in a place of business. I don't need y'all to just forward you down. I can't stand that. 4 people down the hallway. Where am I going? I'm a big girl. Move over. Let me by. I want to say, excuse me. So now you know what I do in public? I don't move. You don't have common sense to make room for me. It's not the right thing to do. I don't want you to do it, but this is what I do. When I don't have on Naaman Forest gear, I will knock you over. That is the rudest thing you can ever do, is have 4 people across going down a place of business and no one can get by. That agitates me. That's why I tell you guys to the right. Move over. That's courtesy. That's respect. When I don't have on uniform, I will knock you down. Because it's rude. I need somewhere to walk. And y'all know what I mean, especially my young ladies, all 4 of you together. 2 and 2. 2 and 2. 2 and 2 is good. Let somebody else walk by. Okay, so back to my story today. Guys, y'all seen a fish?
Not keep knocking the table over.
We're good. All right. So back to the story. Where did I drop off? Somebody help me, A1.
So you're trying
With the blood.
You yelled at them.
I pulled them outside. Because I didn't yell, I really did. I came in here and took care of business while I belonged in here. And gave them how I felt about their performance out there. And what I expect. Guys, I have high expectations for you. You know that, right? Because you represent us. You represent me. If you look crazy, I look crazy. And I don't like that. You know that. I don't prefer to look crazy. Selena's doing us. So, when they came in the room and my females went out, they were asking all kind of questions. Again, what I tell A1, what I tell you, what do you need to be on cue with when we're out there in the hospital setting? Observation skills. So, one of them asked in the hallway, which way were they headed? They were headed towards the back. A2, does that make sense? They thought that the person that was bleeding was running this way. Does that make sense?
No.
Who said no? You A1.
Oh.
A2, does that make, we walked the walk. They have not.
No.
Why? Because Dave said it. Somebody else. Somebody else, A2, guess. Does that make sense? You're bleeding, you're gonna go to the back of the building?
No.
Where are you gonna run?
After they come up to the clinic.
If you're bleeding, where are you running?
To the nurse.
To the front. It makes sense. No, they had to be coming this way. Then it turned, going to the cafeteria. What does that tell you? They're trying to get where?
To the clinic.
There you go. To the clinic. To get help. Yeah, common sense. Now, another thing, observation skills. A1 hit it. How do I know it was an artery? The drops were,
Red.
well, I'm hoping veins is red. A2, don't try to help. A1,
Big drops.
big drops. Because veins do what, A1?
Squirt.
They ooze. Who said squirt? You better not squirt. You have already been through this. Ooh, Jesus. God help me. Okay. So, I could tell just by using my observational skills. Have I even used this? No. Not at all. I know if it's big drops, an artery. Why does an artery thump out? Yeah, coming from the heart. It's pumping. Big squirts. It's an artery. Somebody is injured severely. Look at all that information I got and gathered just by looking at the blood on the floor. Assessment skills are key. Now, what would happen if I'm an instructor and I'm standing there and looking? What will you think of me? What if
You're
incompetent? What if I'm yelling and screaming? What are you thinking of me? Would you trust me?
yeah, I was gonna say that.
No. Okay, that brings us into story number 2. Dave and I. We tried it out by accident. Dave is doing a hosted competition on careers. I've chosen them for her. I chose Coach Brown. Why do you think A2? I chose Coach Brown for one.
She's an
Athletic trainer. Why would I choose that? What
That's-
reason? Who cares? Huh?
It's in the medical field.
It's in the medical field. A lot of people don't know that. Yes, ma'am, it is. Use all those skills there. Chose that one. I chose a school nurse. Why? Oh, Jesus, that's a bad mistake. Y'all know how I feel about RNs. Okay. All right. So, I chose a school nurse. Why? Why? Hello, A2. A1 has walked this. Huh?
She's also in the medical field.
And she's using two careers. I'm using two, right?
You're
Okay.
an educator.
So there's two. All right, then I chose myself.
Of course, because you're the best.
That's right. I'm demoted when I'm an RN, but I'm promoted when I'm RT. Now, being serious, that's a joke again, but being serious about an RT. A2, why would I choose RT? Why? What difference does it make? There's 3 reasons. A1, give them one.
Undervalued career.
Huh?
Your career is undervalued.
You're important.
Undervalued, yeah. Undervalued, so underrated. Yes, Kyle, thank you. We don't get our just dues as RT. Nobody really knows what I do. They think I give massages all day. Seriously, they think I give back massages. Until you need me. So that's one, underrated. Thank you, Kyle. Somebody else in A1, help him out. 2 more reasons. Underrated. Why else would I choose my own career? A1, we did
To
this.
know about the respiratory.
Why is it important that we know about RTs?
I just said it.
Why though? You said it's important, but you didn't say how or why.
I said to learn about the respiratory system.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay, thank you. Okay. So to learn about the respiratory system, that's right. And what's the third one? A1, Jay, you better join me. A1, why? A1, we did this together. Jay, help him out. Guys, y'all going into the medical field? Jay's gonna be an RN for sure.
Because you're on site and have knowledge in your field and can help her out as well as by.
Yeah, I still kind of understanding the system though. And Kyle's working awfully hard, A1. He's not the only one in that class. Steven, come on.
I don't remember.
What? You need to know about the system yourself. It's an underrated career field, and it's important. How can you be out there and not know how to keep someone going? It crosses over every field. If you don't know heart and lungs, guys, how are you going to make it? Which brings us back to Dave again. Now, that's why I chose it for her. To help get the information out about what RT is all about. We go down there on simple. It was so simple, was it not? O2 E-cylinder, that's all I wanted. That's all. We go down there. We just excited. We going down here and we thinking we're gonna have a good little conversation. Okay, and asked if we could borrow one of her E-cylinders. She says, I don't have any. I said, what are you talking about? You don't have any E-cylinders? She said, no, they won't give them to me. They won't put them on the campus. I said, we don't have any shit on campus at all. I said, not a flow meter on the wall? She said, no. I said, what if we need oxygen? She just looked at me. I said, what happens? She said, well, they won't, it's too expensive. I said, no, it's not. One E-cylinder? Costs hardly nothing. But you do have to have a prescription for O2. We talked about this. Why?
It's a drug.
It's a drug. Ooh, love it. Somebody was up. And they heard me that day. Yes. A physician will have to give you some type of prescription because it's a gas. It can also kill. You don't know what you're doing, but that you can kill, you can do damage. So yes, so I'm like, we don't have a flow meter for oxygen in the wall, the thing? She said, no, and I said, any air? Do we have an airflow meter? Because I can run my nebulizer off of O2 or air. She says, no. I said, we don't have anything? And she said, no. She said, we just don't have anyone to check those things. We don't have anyone that, I said, check what? Did I not, Dave? Was my face torn up?
Yeah.
So what are you talking, because I'm serious now. When I get serious about something and I'm passionate, you have all my undivided attention. So I was focused on her because she wasn't making any sense to me. I said, check them for what? They seal. What do you need to check them for? To make sure. To make sure what? What are you talking about? You know, what? And she was just standing there looking at me. They're sealed off. The only time you need to check them is when you crack them open. You crack it open, put the regulator on, and then it evaporates out. Then you need to see how much you have in there, in that tank. She said, well, people dive, and they said, they don't use e-cylinders to dive. What are you talking about? That's liquid O2. Yeah, that's the point I'm getting to. You see how you can tell who's competent and who's not? She scares me now. Y'all just let me die. Take me to Methodist. I don't want any treatment. I don't. We can laugh, but I'm being very passionate and serious. If you don't understand O2, it's a problem. It's a problem in here. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep it brutally honest. That's a problem for me. And no wonder we don't have any O2. I would be scared for them to use it. Because you don't understand what you're talking about. Divers using mixture gas. I came back here and I looked it up because I told A1, I've been out in the field for 3 years, but I know I ain't crazy. Pop right up. Liquid O2 is what they use. It's a combination of gases. Y'all, please go out here and learn everything people have to give you. Because that's how we know if you're competent or not. It's by the way you answer us. And again, that's no critical thinking skill right here at all. This baby doesn't even understand the basics of an EC. I don't even think she knows what it looked like. Because she was thoroughly confused when she was talking to me. E-cylinder. And you're up front. We depend on you. We need you. We don't need you to start talking crazy at a time we need you. So I don't know what happened to the young man with the fingers, but if y'all find out, please let me know, because I am concerned. One of the things I talked about with A1, my thing was, if he had something wrapped around him, if that much blood was out, that's a problem. If he didn't have anything wrapped, that's a problem, huh? So that's what I think Erica said. But was it enough pressure? Because he shouldn't have been bleeding from the very back all the way up to the front if they applied pressure back there. So that's my point in taking class time out to point out to you guys, if it happened in here, I'm gonna get something as tight as I could to put around whatever that is that I have going. If the fingers are dangling, I'm coming up above. And I am going to wrap to where air can't even get through there. Does that make sense? This is for you to take as FYI. I don't care where you are. Go up above it. And if you see it squirting, you already know what? Hello? It's an artery. You're gonna bleed out in a matter of minutes. You get something quickly, and you wrap as tight as you can, quickly, and get them help. And if you have ice, you want ice on there. Why? Why?
Numb it.
Numb it, but what's more
It
important?
stops the bleeding. Or
It may have clotting. What am I after?
Preserve the fingers.
Preserving those fingers. Maybe somebody can reattach. You only have a couple of minutes to do something.
After meeting with Ms. Jones, I did a post-assessment as far as what I saw and the evidence that I saw during my field observation. Instructional strategies. It was mainly teacher-led due to the circumstances and the change that Ms. Jones had in the life experience that was brought to her attention, that was brought due to the life experience that the class experienced the day before while coming back from clinicals. She did a lot of questioning and answering. She also did a lot of higher order thinking. She actually asked them the steps and the reason why. For example, there was a question about the blood. How did they know that the blood came from an artery or was it from a vein, and the size of the blood splatter? She used that actual analogy to kind of have the students think critically. Well, I didn't see the student be cut, so I don't know where he was cut, but by the size of the blood, and she went through and she said were there splatters, were there drips, were there streams of blood, how big were the spots of blood on the floor, and the students were able to take their visual assessment and they were able to answer her and giving her feedback as far as what they thought. They all said it came from an artery. Then the next step was, which direction was the student traveling in? If they had to find the victim. So then they went back and they kind of analyzed using their critical thinking. The students were going, it looked like the student was going to the front. And then she went through and said, well, why would the student go back? You know, people ran to the back of the school, and the students were like, that's not logical because the nurse is in the front. And then when she said when the blood evidence was, when the blood spots were going through the cafeteria, she asked the students, where was the victim going towards? And they all said the nurse's office. And they said, well, this is all what you guys did was a critical analysis of what you observed, and then you were able to piece together what actually happened. So those were great ways for her to assess what the students were actually retaining. She walked one period, she has a split classroom where they're double blocked. So she has a group of students during A1 and then they're double blocked, and some of those students stay A2, and then she has those students A2, A3. So the way she rolled it over was great. She had A2 students that she had prior to give her recalling the facts. What did they learn from before? What was gone over before? What were the facts that she had? And she had them answer. The students were very attentive. They were able to raise their hand and answer, but the atmosphere was very relaxed. You can tell she established a ritual of how the students were to respond with her. She stayed in the power zone, moving between each table and addressing each student with a hand on the shoulder or a hand on their desk, giving them great eye contact, especially when one of the students said, you know, she was talking about the adult reaction, and one of the students demonstrated the adult reaction, and she walked over to the student and everyone turned around to face the student. So that was good, allowing at me viewing and observing, seeing that the students were responding to the way she was teaching. And to give me student engagement. Student engagement was gauged by the students answering and giving her feedback as she went through those scaling questions of what, when, where, how, why do we do this? And she related it back to where they were going and prepping them for their activity and what they were going to be doing. Then to take a break from the case study, she then had to go ahead and prepare the students for them and where they were going to be at for their practicum study, for their clinical rotation. She began to pass out IDs. The students were attentively listening. They followed her with their eyes and their body by turning their body language indicated they were listening to her. As she was passing out IDs, I did notice that the students did reflect back to the board and write down things, and they went on to other projects that she had been working on to keep themselves busy. Immediately when that was over, the students then redirected their attention, going back through what an RT, a nurse, and others were able to do. One thing that went very well was her way of taking a real world situation and an actual emergency that happened on campus to de-escalate the students' anxiety, and then to go through and show them how proper reaction and how take that as a learning experience. So that went really well. What I would have changed is the reference to co-work. In conclusion, when me and Ms. Jones met, we did have a discussion about what I observed. We talked about the student engagement, the lesson, the incident. We talked about the differentiated instruction that is used by the teacher, and because of the circumstances why it was teacher led, Ms. Jones felt that that her assessment of student engagement, she likes to ask the students those she likes to ask those students those questions that make them think, especially since their objective was to cover critical thinking, being in a clinical environment. She wanted to make sure that her students understood how to apply those thinking skills to real world experiences. So the way she addressed and noted if the students were listening or paying attention was she asked questions. Students that were very quiet, for example, she directly asked them a question, and a couple of students said, "I forgot," or "I don't remember," and she jokingly encouraged the other students to help them out, give them a lifeline. What are we missing, or what did we miss, and review that. Then she went back to the same two students and asked them the same question but in a different way, and the students were able to then correctly answer her questions about why an RT is a career she picked for a student to do her paper or information about, her speech about, and then the students were able to correctly identify what the other students had previously gave them that helpline, what they couldn't remember what they learned from the previous lesson. She also used an experience where the student and her were looking for a particular device or oxygen to help give a student a asthma treatment. She talked about how important that was, and then she also gave the difference between the RN and an RT and what they did, and why it was important that why would an RT know more about respiratory and knew about the oxygen or the flow machine that they needed to help these students, and the nurse was really confused. Well, she said it's not the fact that the nurse didn't know what she was doing, it was that there was different fields, and oftentimes an RT is not looked at because their jobs are considered not important. But she went on to tell the students, well, lungs and your heart are really important to function your body, and an RT deals with heart and lungs and breathing treatments, and she wanted to demonstrate to the students how that was important. She also brought the student in that she did take down to the nurse's office to help her get the equipment they needed for this particular lesson or demonstration. And then the student was able to then comment on how she was shocked that the nurse didn't know about the machine, and that there wasn't a machine on campus for students who did have breathing problems or could not breathe. If there was other means besides CPR, how were they given emergency breathing treatments for their nebulizer if there wasn't a nebulizer on campus. So that was really interesting, the way Ms. Jones checked for the level of understanding, and also kind of changed it up as far as breaking up the lesson and giving different pieces of information. At the closure of the lesson, Mrs. Jones then went in and did a review. These are the things that you need to do. These are the things you need to have. So she kind of went back through and gave a review. It was really nice to sit down and talk to Ms. Jones and get a view of where she was going with the lesson and how she was trying to apply those real world applications into the lesson, to tie the lesson in instead of going in and using a regular book and the notes and what it read, or the case study that actually was chosen out of the book. She did state that she tries to use a lot of actual cases that happen in the hospital when she worked as an RT, current cases that she tries to get from current RTs and ER technicians, and she also tries to use things that happen on campus, injuries and things like that that require clinical experience and the way they are handled, and actually walk the students through the appropriate manners to handle those situations, better equipping the kids. I was really impressed with her kids. Surprising information that was revealed during this experience is the different methods of teaching and this personality that is brought into it. It really brings to light when you come into a classroom and you take the role as an administrator observing. It was really neat to see how the students really do engage in learning, looking at it from a different perspective. As a teacher, you sometimes get clout and you're frustrated. You think they're not paying attention enough. You don't think your students are learning, or that the activity that you did was enjoyable, because you're concentrating on delivering the message. You're concentrating on getting those answers and making sure that the students, you have so much going on. You're looking at the students' behavior and what they're doing, and you're trying to redirect them and keep them engaged, that oftentimes we don't look and see, we can't see what others see. And so coming in, it was really surprising that, yeah, students, they are engaged, they are learning, they are paying attention, and they do interact, and the interaction is well worth it. And the efforts that you do put into your lessons. So that was surprising to see, because it's a different, I've never ever had to sit on the other end and view a lesson that way. It was always the other way around, where I was being observed and having to make sure I was making those objectives and those TEKS and Power Zone and changing the learning style, making it, putting it into the student's hand and doing group interaction or peer-to-peer or thumbs up, thumbs down to check engagement. It was very different. How will this experience transform my practice as a school administrator? It has changed me. I won't forget what it feels like to be the person who's being watched. And I love that Mrs. Jones took the example of our assistant principal coming in and viewing her and watching her, and how they're going to be watched and viewed and observed, and the reasons why they're viewed, watched and observed and analyzed, and people are writing and asking questions and looking at what they're doing, is because, one, those could be your future bosses. Two, they're assessing to see what you are learning, and you're showing them and demonstrating as a student your materials that you are learning. And I liked how she also said, I'm still a student also. I am learning, and this individual watching me or following me and looking over my shoulder and asking questions is actually making sure I am up to date and current with my information, that I am delivering the appropriate material to you as an educator, that I am also making sure that I am current and up to date, and I do know what I'm talking about, and I am delivering it appropriately and effectively to you. So that was one thing as an administrator I will always remember. I was in that spot. And to take into consideration that things happen, just like Ms. Jones. They had the incident that happened with the student who severely injured himself, and how it affected the classroom environment, what they had to do to respond, and then take it into the lesson the following day when she had these students in her classroom, and to actually conduct a lesson and roll it over and to change the way she did. And it's not going to always go the same way, and to take that into consideration. As long as the teacher, the educator, is able to demonstrate effective learning, and her teaching strategies or instructional strategies are going to change, I will always remember that. Ms. Jones was able to take a real world experience and relate it to the lesson. That's one thing that she did very well. A thing that I would have probably changed was the application of the lesson and marrying the In conclusion, when me and Ms. Jones met, we did have a discussion about what I observed. We talked about the student engagement, the lesson, the incident. We talked about the differentiated instruction that is used by the teacher, and because of the circumstances why it was teacher-led, Ms. Jones felt that that her assessment of student engagement, she likes to ask the students those those questions that make them think, especially since their objective was to cover critical thinking, being in a clinical environment. She wanted to make sure that her students understood how to apply those thinking skills to real world experiences. So the way she addressed and noted if the students were listening or paying attention was she asked questions. Students that were very quiet, for example, she directly asked them a question, and a couple of students said, "I forgot," or "I don't remember," and she jokingly encouraged the other students to help them out, give them a lifeline. What are we missing, or what did we miss, and review that. Then she went back to the same two students and asked them the same question but in a different way, and the students were able to then correctly answer her questions about why an RT is a career she picked for a student to do her paper or information about, her speech about, and then the students were able to correctly identify what the other students had previously gave them that helpline, what they couldn't remember what they learned from the previous lesson. She also used an experience where the student and her were looking for a particular device or oxygen to help give a student a asthma treatment. She talked about how important that was, and then she also gave the difference between the RN and an RT and what they did, and why it was important that why would an RT know more about respiratory and knew about the oxygen or the flow machine that they needed to help these students, and the nurse was really confused. Well, she said it's not the fact that the nurse didn't know what she was doing, it was that there was different fields, and oftentimes an RT is not looked at because their jobs are considered not important. But she went on to tell the students, well, lungs and your heart are really important to function your body, and an RT deals with heart and lungs and breathing treatments, and she wanted to demonstrate to the students how that was important. She also brought the student in that she did take down to the nurse's office to help her get the equipment they needed for this particular lesson or demonstration. And then the student was able to then comment on how she was shocked that the nurse didn't know about the machine, and that there wasn't a machine on campus for students who did have breathing problems or could not breathe. If there was other means besides CPR, how were they given emergency breathing treatments for their nebulizer if there wasn't a nebulizer on campus. So that was really interesting, the way Ms. Jones checked for the level of understanding, and also kind of changed it up as far as breaking up the lesson and giving different pieces of information. At the closure of the lesson, Mrs. Jones then went in and did a review. These are the things that you need to do. These are the things you need to have. So she kind of went back through and gave a review. It was really nice to sit down and talk to Ms. Jones and get a view of where she was going with the lesson and how she was trying to apply those real world applications into the lesson, to tie the lesson in instead of going in and using a regular book and the notes and what it read, or the case study that actually was chosen out of the book. She did state that she tries to use a lot of actual cases that happen in the hospital when she worked as an RT, current cases that she tries to get from current RTs and ER technicians, and she also tries to use things that happen on campus, injuries and things like that that require clinical experience and the way they are handled, and actually walk the students through the appropriate manners to handle those situations, better equipping the kids. I was really impressed with her kids and the level of understanding. They're relaxed, how they interact, the conversation went back and forth, how she went back and corrected those behaviors. There was a student texting on her cell phone, and she kind of quickly said the student's name. Selena, let's get with me. Selena knows what we're trying to do here. And then she brought the student back into the conversation. She also, another student then from the A1 class who said, I forgot, Miss Jade, she went in and she kind of said, oh, Miss Jade, let's try to help you out. And then she had another student come in and rescue them. I did enjoy this experience and this practice. It was a great activity, and thank you.